Hello everybody, my name is Felix Cramer. I'm the director of photography for the new Netflix drama series Oktoberfest Beer and Blood, and I'm here to answer some great questions for you. Actually, it was director Hannu Salonen who approached me 1 year before shooting Oktoberfest. So we talked, and then he sent me the script. And when I read the script, I was completely overwhelmed because the first time I thought this story is more about joy and happiness of Oktoberfest in a historic scenery, but it was completely different. The story has Shakespearean drama dimensions. It's about Darwinism between characters, questions about survival of the fittest. And that was really interesting to read the script and to transfer the script in a visual, dramatic way. For me, it was important less to be historical correct, more the feeling that we would like to achieve. And the feeling should be very modern. So we used modern elements from Western movies like extreme angles, low angles, high angles, or from horror movies like dark lighting, smooth camera movements, or even opera elements with change of lighting in one shot. So for me, the feeling was more important than to be historical correct. Regarding the cinematography. On the other side, of course, we wanted to be really authentic. So our production designer and costume designer, they both did a very intense research to be as authentic as possible and to be as real as possible regarding their time. And altogether, that was, for me, the visual approach on Oktoberfest. This is hard to say, since the world of Oktoberfest Beer and Blood has never been created before. Of course, we watched period series like The Nick, Godless, or Peaky Blinders, but we realized they couldn't be used as guideline. So I came up with the idea to analyze the late Romantic art, reflected by painters like Arnold Böcklin or Anselm Feuerbach, and also the expressionists like Franz Marc and other members of the Neue Künstlervereinigung in Munich. Also, the music of that time from Richard Wagner inspired us. Starting the preparation of Oktoberfest, I sat together with our production designer Benedikt Herford and our costume designer Michaela Hoyes to create a guideline and a kind of roadmap for our series. We wanted to show the turn of century, starting in a time where people used candles and gas lamps, and ending in a time where electric light and modern technology was common. We've reflected all that in our design, and we used less saturated colors at the beginning, for example in the Hoflingers brewery, and we changed that into more saturated and more active colors at the end. With my gaffer Markus Thiermeier, I worked precisely on the lighting design, and we adapted our concept to these general ideas. The biggest challenge was the Brank Bierburg, and we used dozens of ARRI sky panels that were completely controllable regarding brightness and colors. In general, we used natural kind of lighting, but we stylized it more and more in the series with strong backlight and fog. Working with Hanno was really a great experience. Hanno is a great director and full of inspiration, and I love to work and collaborate with him. We worked as a team the whole shooting. I used the DP system, meaning that I had two operators for the cameras. This is not quite common in Germany. Usually you operate a camera by yourself, but of course you stick to the camera and have not the chance to communicate in a way with the director like we did. So sitting together in front of the video monitors every shooting day and for many hours, we could inspire ourselves by talking about each scene and making the best we could. And also in the pre-production, we worked together with a great storyboard artists, and we storyboarded about third of all scenes. And during that process, we improved a lot of that scenes that have been written in the scripts and established ideas that were not written before. Regarding color, there exist only black and white photos from that time. So my approach was using colors that have been used by the late Romantic artists that I already mentioned, and also the expressionists. And that was my personal guideline for the color palette during this series. And of course also the costume colors that have been brought by our costume designer and tapestry from that time. So altogether we created a very specific color palette, and my goal was to enhance that color palette also by the lighting technology. We used LED lighting to precisely change the colors of the lighting, and that was important to create the best and accuratest color palette. In the post-production, I worked with a special grading technology that I developed together with my colorist Claudia Gittel. So we combine usually different kind of LUTs, and by doing this we can create our own film stock. And we created a very specific film stock for Oktoberfest Beer and Blood to bring the colors that we had in front of the camera perfectly in our filmic world. When I read the script, I realized that this God's perspective, this high-angle perspective, was already written into the script. And that has a reason. The reason is that one character is the Oktoberfest. And to see the greatness of the Oktoberfest, of this folks festival, how big it was, also already at that time, you have to have this high-angle perspective on the fest. For me, it was really important not only to have a common drone perspective that you see in so many movies already. I wanted to combine this drone perspective with the perspective you have when you're close by the people. So we did a lot of exercises and perfectionated the movement, flying down to the ground, catching the drone, and then using the drone like a Steadicam, going through the crowd of people and coming close to our protagonists. For me, the lens is the most important part of creating the unique film look for each movie. For Oktoberfest, I tested at least 2 dozens of lenses and types from different manufacturers. And I ended up using this Genesis G35 lens, and they have a standard version and a vintage version. And the vintage version, uses uncoated lenses. And this lens combines, I would say, a modern feeling of lenses with less chromatic aberration, and the edges are not so unfocused than, for example, anamorphic lenses. But on the other side, you get beautiful and strong lens flares due to the uncoated lenses. And this is really important for me to create this very specific historical but also modern feeling of Oktoberfest. The Proaim Powermatic Scissor grain is a great tool, and I use that grain for many shots. It's comparable to a common telescopic grain like the Techno grain, but the difference is that it's really lightweight, so you can easily change position and also use that grain for locations that are difficult to access. We used that grain for many shots and also improved operating the grain to achieve very smooth movements. The biggest challenge of that show was the short amount of shooting time. We had 66 days for the whole series, that are 11 days per episode, 45 minutes. When you see the huge opening ceremony of the Oktoberfest, we had 300 extras that day, and we had them only for this one day. So we had 2 units working simultaneously, shooting this ceremony. And I had to coordinate both units, so I ran back and forth to coordinate them properly. But good preparation helped us to face that challenge. There are many favorite shots, but one shot is really special. It's a shot where you see cotton candy falling into a mud. We used artificial blood to make the mud red. But when the rain falls down, you see that the drops coming up are also red. So you see that there's blood in the mud. So this shot symbolizes, from my perspective, perfectly our series. On the one side you see joy, on the other side you see violence. Currently, I'm working on a new project called The White House at the Rhine. It tells the story about a hotel and its owners between 1918 and 1938, so between First and Second World War. It's a great movie reflecting German history in a condensed location. And next year we will probably continue shooting Oktoberfest second season. My passion is to create historic worlds in a modern filmic way, and I'm very excited for you to see my cinematography of Oktoberfest coming to Netflix on October 1st.